Namaste. My name is Parama Karuna Devi, and this is the channel for the Vedic Research Center. Today's video is exploring the difference between Sanatana Dharma, Varnashrama Dharma, and Hinduism. In the first part, we speak about the Varna Dharma. If you have questions, you're welcome to write to the email address you find in the description of the video. Thank you. Sanatana Dharma, Hinduism, Varnashrama Dharma. Sanatana Dharma is not Varnashrama Dharma. The Varnashrama Dharma is the most precise and scientific application of the concept of Sanatana Dharma. But lots of practices, lots of dharmas that can be called Sanatana Dharma are not following the Varnashrama Dharma. This is extremely important to understand. Now, the issue of Hinduism in respect to Sanatana Dharma and Varnashrama Dharma is still very different. Because Hinduism is a very vast definition, and in fact, not even the Hindu leaders can give a very clear definition of what Hinduism is, because there is a lot of contradiction, especially if you go and see in my book what is the meaning of Hinduism. This why I became a Hindu. There is a chapter. What is the meaning of Hinduism? What does Hinduism mean? Now, according to the legal history and the traditional history, according to the authorities, Hinduism has something to do with India. Because when the Islamic invasions came from the West, they encountered the river Sindhu. So whoever lived in that area, beyond the river Sindhu, around the river Sindhu, and beyond the river, they were all more or less practicing some form of Hinduism, which includes the tribal traditions. Because we can see lots of tribal groups and traditions, they're also focused on Shiva Mahadev, the mother goddess, mostly. And you see, for example, we are talking about Jagannath. Everybody knows that Jagannath was originally worshipped by the Sabara Vishwavas. So the tribals are Hindus if they identify with the basic principles of Sanatana Dharma. Now, Varnashrama Dharma is much more scientific, in the sense that the Varnashrama Dharma is based on the categories of Varnas and Ashrams. Ashram is not just a place where religious people live. Generally people today think that's the meaning of ashram. Actually, ashram is a type of life that follows some religious rules, which also can apply to a place where religious people live, because they follow the religious rules. Now, there are 4 Varnas and 4 Ashrams. Okay? Now, the 4 Varnas, I think you already know, is Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra. There is no 5th Varna. It means there are no Dalits, no untouchables, no mlechas, no chandalas, no nothing, because they're not a part of the Varnashrama dharma. So just 4. And there are 4 ashramas. The 4 ashramas are brahmacharya, grihastha, vanaprastha, and sannyas. Okay. Now, if you know the meaning of these 4 varnas and 4 ashrams, we can continue. Otherwise, I stop here and I ask if you have any questions, you want to clarify anything about this.
No, I'm fine.
It's okay.
Yeah, we can
Okay.
continue.
So we continue. Now, also the Varnashrama dharma rules are often misunderstood and imagined in the wrong way. The varnas, the brahmanas, have more duties and less rights than all the 4 varnas, because they're supposed to be more evolved, more responsible. So a brahmana should not have any property. Should not dress in a expensive manner. Should not get a salary from anyone. This is one of the most important rules for a brahmana. If a brahmana gets some payment for something, he's called a dog. Brahmanas can get donations, can actually go and beg for donations, but anything that Brahmana receives is without any tags attached, any strings attached. The Brahmana must always be completely independent. Nobody tells a Brahmana what to do. This is the most important right and duty of a Brahmana. If a Brahmana sells his knowledge, the Bhagavata Purana, in the description of the Kali Yuga, calls these people prostitutes. They're actually trying to prostitute the goddess of knowledge for their own selfish, materialistic gains. These people are not Brahmanas. So, I understand that in the present day society we need money to survive. But a true Brahmana should never ask for a payment. Brahmana should ask for donations. Brahmana remains humble. So the Brahmana must always be humble, detached from material possessions and positions, always kind, always generous and affectionate to all beings, and always ready to purify other human beings, especially through knowledge, through guidance, etc. So, this is the position of a Brahmana. The position of a Kshatriya is a little less difficult, because a Kshatriya can defend his honor. Because he uses his honor to do his job. Because if a Kshatriya is respected, he will be better able to defend the prajas. because the criminals will say, oh, here comes the kshatriya. We better, better behave. But a kshatriya is expected to be always ready to sacrifice everything he has. Wealth, himself, family even. All the family of a kshatriya must be ready to be sacrificed for the benefit of the kingdom and the prajas. So the kshatriya is almost as selfless as the brahmana. The only purpose of the kshatriya is to protect and support the prajas. The governments today consider the prajas to exist to protect and support the government. It is totally upside down. The kshatriyas are supposed to exist to protect and support the people, not the other way around. This is why we call it a democracy. Should be the government of the people. But it's confused. Okay, we'll leave democracy to some other time. Anyway, so this is the idea of a kshatriya in the Varna system. Now, the Vaishya is the entrepreneur, is someone who develops, creates wealth. How a kshatriya can create wealth? By agriculture, growing grains mostly, and protecting the cattle, the animals. A Vaishya cannot tell anybody else what to do. Today, Vaishyas are buying the Brahmanas and the Kshatriyas. Today it's a Vaishyas. This is called plutocracy. It is the government of the people who have money. Whether it's openly or covertly, it is the people who have money that tell the intellectuals and the government people what to do, which is very bad. It's exactly the opposite of the Vedic system. In the Vedic system, the Vaishyas are working to develop and fructify. They take the land. They don't buy the land. But Vaishyas don't buy the land. They go get some piece of land, then they start working on it. There is no private property in a general sense. Any Vaishya who wants to do service to Mother Earth and the society as the body of the Purusha Shukta, the Purusha Shukta shows that the Virat Purusha is a social body, is the body of society. So the Vaishya is doing seva to Mother Earth and the Virat Purusha. And the religious duty of the Vaishya, the highest religious duty of the Vaishya, is to feed everyone. Just like the duty of the Brahmana is to teach, the duty of the Kshatriya is to protect, the duty of the Vaishya is to feed. If the Vaishya doesn't feed everyone, it's not a Vaishya. So, a Vaishya usually takes the land in the agricultural belt outside the capital of the kingdom, because in Vedic times, a kingdom is fundamentally one city. Now, the problem is that lots of people, when they speak about king and kingdoms, they have the picture of European medieval kingdoms, or even ancient, Romans kingdoms, or even, the Greek kingdoms. They're not, they're not correct. In fact, if we go back enough in time, long back in time, we see that even in the other ancient cultures, a kingdom was just a city. Because the king has to be responsible, personally and directly responsible for the protection and support of all the prajas, how many prajas he can take care of. So the king is sitting in the capital of the kingdom and taking care. The king has a family, so can be blood family, can be adopted family, but the family of the king is also involved in the kingdom work, in the kshatriya work, because the entire family is engaged in the swadharma, in the Varna dharma. So the outside the city, the city is much bigger than what people think today, in the sense that it's not just the one house over the other. In the Vedic system, we see the descriptions of Mathura and Ayodhya and so many other cities. The capital city was very wide and had a lot of parks and nice places without houses, big parks and big gardens. Every house was supposed to have a kitchen garden and a flower garden, and usually a couple of cows, 1 or 2 cows. So the agriculture outside the city was about growing grains. And in fact, there is a famous saying, Annam is the tadvratam. The vrata of the Vaishya is to grow grains, annam. The word annam means food, but in fact, more specifically, it means grains. You cannot grow sufficient grains in your kitchen garden, in your house. You need a bigger, farming system. So the Vaishyas were mostly growing grains. And then they were growing, other stuff as per their need. As sometimes, I remember I have a friend in Agartala that his family was his Bengali family, and as the kings of Tripura had invited a lot of Bengalis to settle there and develop. So the family of my friend was practically totally self-sufficient. The only 2 things, they only purchased in the market 2 things, which was salt and needles. Everything else they produced themselves. They had hundreds of cows. This is the system. But they were mostly taking care of themselves. I don't know if they were growing lots of grains for selling. Probably. But in the Vedic system, the Vaishyas were mostly living in the agricultural belt around the city and growing grains and keeping the cows. The lactating cows and the small calves were kept inside this agricultural belt. and sometimes taken out, especially the calves. They were taken out from time to time, and then they were coming back home to sleep, to get their milk and to sleep, until the calves were old enough they didn't need milk anymore. Then they were sent in the forest to take care of themselves. Because outside the agricultural belt, there was a forest belt. And the forest belt didn't have any boundaries. The forest could extend for, in entire regions. And in the forest, anyone could go and live. But they could not count on the protection of the kshatriya. Because the kshatriya usually didn't go to the forest. Usually. Unless requested specifically. So in the forest we find a lot of rishi settlements. We find the vanaprasthas, and we find the tribals, and we find the elephants, and we find whatever animal you want to find. But forest was a big place. Now, the Vaishyas sometimes were going into the forest area. They were traveling, because even if you have two main grains seasons in a year, still you have long periods where you're not required to do much work. So the Vaishyas, after the harvest and everything, they were taking some excess products, and they were going out to sell it in exchange for other things that they could not grow. So they were going to the forest sometimes, to purchase rare wood, herbs, this and that. And they were coming back, and they were purifying themselves, because in the forest, you don't have very easy, opportunities for keeping purity. But it's okay, you can do that. In the meantime, the regular worship, the karma kanda religious duties, were kept going. Well, one person in the family could do that. Usually the karta, but if the karta preferred to go around and travel, anyone in the family, the eldest son or whatever, because they were an extended family system. And this clarifies what the Vaishyas were doing. The Shudras, by definition, are people who are not able to organize themselves. Shudra is anyone who needs a salary and needs a boss who tells them what to do. This could be under-employer or even independently. Under-employer, Shudras were working as servants, assistants, or whatever in the house and the establishment of their employers, who could be any of the Varna. So usually they were doing manual labor. They were working with their body. So they were carrying stuff, cleaning, doing, gardening, whatever you can do with your hand and body that doesn't require a lot of brain. So they were happy, they were taken care of, because the employer had the duty to take care of all the needs of his servants. In fact, the rule is that any grihasta, any person who is in the grihasta ashram, means a family person, Before sitting down to eat his own meal, he has to feed everyone. After he has made sure that everybody has been fed, okay, my work is done, I can sit down and eat. This means the Shudras were eating before the the owner of of the establishment and the house. So the Shudras were getting sufficient food, good food. They were getting a nice place to stay because they were living in the same house of the employer or in the same establishment. Like if you have a farm, you have rooms, for the farm hands, for the laborers in the farm. If you have a small cottage industry, you have a place where the people who work in the cottage industry, you have cottages, So people were, the employees had everything they needed. If anyone got sick, if anyone got old, anyway, they were still taken care of. So they had no worry. They didn't have to pay any taxes. They didn't have to buy anything. They had everything they needed. They just had to ask. Or even sometimes not even to ask, because that was considered normal that they had to receive the food and everything. If they wanted something extra, they asked. Also, because there were a lot of ritual ceremonies. It is the system, the traditional system, also Krishna saying in Gita, that any ritual should have a distribution of food and presents to everyone, not just to the Brahmanas. The Brahmanas were offered food first because, it was a mark of respect, but everybody had to be fed. There's many passages in the Shastra when they speak about the yagyas. They say that even the dogs were fed. Because everybody, the yagyas were a great opportunity. They were getting a lot of stuff. Shudras were getting a lot of stuff. They were getting clothes, ornaments, presents of various types. Whatever was there, they could get as present. The independent Shudras were serving the public. Like, for example, hairdressers. Okay, but the hairdresser has to follow the orders of the customer. Still, as a Shudra, the hairdresser has to do what the customer is telling him to do, because that's a service. So they're still servants. And they got paid. So they don't need the money, but they can get paid in valuable metals or whatever. They could have an open account with regular customers or whatever, but still they were servants. So these are the 4 Varnas. Now the 4 ashramas, the brahmachari learns how to perform the religious duties. This is entirely dependent on the guru. The guru is totally independent, doesn't have to follow any government guidelines, any school book, textbooks or whatever. The guru is totally independent. He can accept whoever he wants and refuse to accept whoever he wants. And the student would go and stay in the house of the guru, in the Gurukula, so that the guru could observe each student very carefully and understand what was the real potential of each student. Of course, because a student would go to the Gurukula around the age of 5, already the children had some kind of training, some kind of upbringing. So some importance, especially in the families where the people were actually following the system of samskaras. Because if you follow the system of samskaras properly, starting from the Garbhadhana samskara, which nobody is doing today and has not done for a long time, but if you follow the Garbhadhana samskara, there's not a 100% guarantee, but it's much easier to get a child that is in the same type of mentality of your family.